But actually, what I said
Albert
was
looked down
what I
Margaret's
said was
dress.
partially true. They wouldn't let Mom go by herself.
Right,
That's
no,
right,
right.
she couldn't go anywhere by
Albert had to
herself.
go with her. In fact, Dad tells a story, and my Uncle Albert corroborated this. When he was courting my mother, he had a red Maxwell. I don't know if it was his or whether he had borrowed it somewhere, but he used to go back and forth from Patterson to New York with this red Maxwell. And he would stay quite late, you know, because he was keeping company at the time. And going back to Patterson one day, he fell asleep at the wheel,
Ooh.
and the thing went off the road. And the last thing he remembers was cutting the switch, you know, before he turned over. Yeah.
Then he had to take the train after that.
I would guess so.
Which was even worse, because he had to catch that last
Yeah,
train.
that's
And
right.
that's the letters that I have from him, where he's apologizing over and over about having to leave and how he looks forward to being back with her the following weekend. And
So
she
how-
was really carrying on about his leaving. in the
Of course
first
she would.
place.
How long was their courtship, do you think?
About
2
a
years.
year and a half.
Well, he gave her a ring almost right away, and she wouldn't let him ask her father.
Well, she's afraid he...
She got a ring in the fall. That picture of them in the fall is when he asked her to marry him, and he brought a ring in a box of candy, in a box of Baracini candy. And she closed it up again and said
She
no.
broke her front tooth.
Really? I'm just kidding. I like that.
And
though.
he wanted a piece of the candy, he would always say, and he never got to see that box open again for another 8 months or something. So I think it's probably about a 2-year courtship, and they were married
Okay.
the following year.
How old were they when they got married?
Oh, she was only 20, wasn't she?
20 when she got married?
1920 they were
1920 they were married.
Yeah,
She's
she was
1899.
20.
She's
And he
in-
was 23.
He
He
was
was 3
1900,
years.
I
3
think.
years
Was it
before
He
you.
was born in 1898, so
1898.
Okay.
she was
I
22.
thought she was born in 1899.
No.
98. That's what I remember.
So she was what when she died? 81?
I gotta look at my birth certificate.
I had
That-
89.
that
I had
makes it
99 and she was 80, but whatever.
Just turned 82 actually, right?
I thought she was as old as a century. When she
Yeah,
I
that's
thought
what we
Dad
always
used to
said.
always say you even had to be ahead of the century.
So she was born
Right.
in the
99. I don't know, whatever.
99, I thought.
We're
it says
talking
98.
approximates
We
here.
have birth certificates, haven't we?
Yeah, I had one. I was looking at it the other day. I forgot.
So they got married when they were 22, and they met each other when they were 20. And they had, and what, did they have you? What, like the first year?
1921.
You were born in 21?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. They had a schedule.
They could.
He's talking about
And
Aunt
talk to
Dilla.
someone who sent for the person who was living in this structure, who was a priest. I don't know why he was living there, and this is Aunt Della's story. This is not history or my story. She said they couldn't take the car any further, but they sent word to this guy. He came over what she said was a mountain, which was probably walking over hills, and met them, and they spent the afternoon. But he lived in this structure.
Maybe he was
So-
a hermit or a monk, or, maybe he was
Well,
That structure
the last,
was
secluded.
maybe
a
he's-
castle, right?
The last time that I was up there, I took Rose up, and we went to Sousa, and we had lunch. And after lunch, I said, I've always wanted to take a look at where this rock pile was that they talked about in the family. And I asked around, and that they said that the Fortezza Adelaide was about 2 kilometers up the road from Sousa, right on the French border, next to the Arco Augusto Cesare, the Arch of Augustus Caesar, next to the brook. And that's on the crest of Sousa. The castle, which is the arc, okay, the arch, and the brook flowing past it. And they have a lion on the far side as a guard, I guess, or what they interpreted as a guard. Well, on the lee side, on the Italian side, not the Italian side, but on the lee side, because it's Italy there, there is a structure, okay, which belonged to the Marchesa Adelaide, okay? And this was dated back, to Roman times, where she held court over the knights, the Roman knights. Now, they weren't knights as we know them today. The Roman knights in those days, they could have been artisans, they could have been commercial people, but they also were minor officials in the Roman hierarchy. Okay? They rode horses, whereas in the army the grunts went on foot. Okay, pilos. But that's standing there, and there's a plaque on the building.
So it's fallen down, but there's still a structure?
No, the structure is sound. It's been rebuilt. It's been rebuilt up as a national monument, I think.
Are you saying that Adelaide
what does the plaque
goes
say?
back to Roman times? The name Adelaide?
The name Adelaide, yes.
Well, then she's not connected to the countess that we've heard of for years, or Marquesa.
Well, she could have been named after her.
She's
The
named
names
after her.
repeat.
Probably every kid in
Now,
Italy
was
knew
this
the
the
same thing.
countess,
Yeah.
was the countess, what was her name?
Marquesa.
Marquesa Adela.
Adele, okay.
See, the government of Susa was presided over by a marquis. I forget his name. I have the information somewhere, and I took it off the library. It goes back to the days as early as Charlemagne, around 600, 800. Well, it was a thoroughfare.
Oh, before that.
You know, it was a thoroughfare coming down from Gaul into Italy. There were various passes, and the one from France going through Susa was through the Arch of Augustus Caesar, okay, next to the brook, a little river, and it's a fast-flowing river.
Right.
It goes right down through Susa at one hell of a rate.
The Cherokees went to Wilmington, and
She's good.
she
Apparently
Periales
she that she's like
stayed
trying to
in
get rid of me
Patterson.
or anything like that.
about 1911,
Um,
Patterson burned down. It was a very famous fire.
yeah,
I don't know if you've heard the
she is,
story.
she is employed.
Aunt Ernie, who was always the funny
She
one
works
in the
actually
family,
with
would have been about
Audio
probably
Visual.
21 or 22
In fact, I
then.
first met her when I was working at the
22
Swiss
maybe.
Matrix.
Her mother sent her to the telegraph office to let the people in the Cherokees know that they were okay.
I met her.
So it cost a lot of money to send the telegram, so she told her, just tell them,
88 or 89.
Casa bruciate, tutte salvati.
And,
Well, she got it backwards and said,
Oh no.
tutti bruciati, casa salvati.
Oh
But it was, now, I don't know if that was true, but Aunt Ernie would always make up a story about herself.
no. Right,
And
right.
everybody would get a laugh out of it.
And they ended up, for a year or two, they ended up moving in together for a while.
It's something else.
A long time.
So I wonder,
And
She
split up
told
have you
us.
done a search at all on Cherokee?
Not yet.
twice. I mean,
Mm-mm.
I've been going out with
There's a lot of Cherokees still living there, but
she split
they were
up
mostly
with him
girls
for
and they
almost a
married,
year in advance of that.
we have
So,
the name of one of them
you know,
we
we've been
can
going out.
give you,
We've been
who was interested in getting some family
She,
history.
I guess I
Oh,
met
yeah,
her.
that's it. Okay. So what the,
What about Palma? Is she still around?
really?
Who?
Palma is still living, and her sister is still living in
I should write them.
yeah,
Brunswick.
right.
But they would have,
Oh, that's on the
that's on the DePalato side.
battalion.
Yeah.
Battalion. That's my mother's side.
Her mother was a DePalato, and
Wow.
What's his name? Just died.
This puppeteer is
There was the three of them that.
you're talking about her brother,
It's a great idea.
professional puppeteer. This is designed by professional
Professional
puppeteer.
puppeteers.
Palma's brother,
Joe?
his brother, no,
Oh, Freddie.
Fred just died.
A year or so ago, a couple years ago.
Apparently we have a whole crowd. Now, this is the time.
clever idea.
Yeah.
You already have to look like the Last Supper here. I really wrote this not knowing really who was going to be here. So I think a lot of the inferences and references I might have to explain. I actually have 20 pages to read. This is only the first one. Barbara called me and said, gee, I want you to write something about recollection of your brother. So you can either have an old recollection or a good recollection or a bad recollection. I opted for the old recollection. The good recollection for me was when his pants fell down one time. That's also the bad recollection. So this is the old recollection. There are a couple of them. The first recollection I had of my brother John was when I was about 4 or 5 years old. Now, you know, John's 11 years older than I am. I know he doesn't look it, but he is older than I am. We were living in the Bronx. I went with my mother and one of my cousins to greet him on his return from Italy, where he was sent for reciting a poem in school, which I couldn't understand, but apparently he got a prize, and they sent him to Italy. I didn't know whether that was a good thing or a bad thing. But I said, what the hell? That's the way 5-year-olds talk in the Bronx at the time. I was in the Depression. My mother slapped my face. I got sick on the trolley. I always got sick on the trolley, no matter where I went. So I wasn't too happy when we got to the dock and we had to wait in this big, dark building while somebody was trying to bring the boat in. I don't ever remember seeing John, but somebody said he landed. Who knew? Another recollection I have of those early days. That's it.
That's it.
Actually, I didn't know whether to salute him when I was a kid or what. I mean, he just seemed to come in and out of my life. I didn't even know who he was. Another recollection I have of those early days is tied to our Sunday dinners we had for the family at the McGraw Avenue apartment in the Bronx. We lived in the Bronx when I was a kid. I can't compete with that.
Is it that one or is it the overhead system here on the top?
That's okay. Can you hear me okay? This is a little family personal stuff, and we all have families and we all have personal stuff. So please ask questions if you don't quite understand. My grandmother, that's my mother's mother, lived with us, so many of the relatives came to our house every Sunday, came to our apartment rather, every Sunday. And this was a fairly extended family. The apartment was small. My mother and father had a large bedroom, and I slept in a crib in their room. I was here 4 or 5 years old. I was still in a crib. Paula, known as Pauline then, slept with my grandmother. Joseph and John, I think, slept in a small bedroom. I never saw them, so I don't remember. On Sunday, at least 4 DePolitos, that's my mother's side of the family, who lived on the floor below, came to dinner. Then 5 or 6 battalions from 2 blocks away, who were also related, came to dinner. And 6 more battalions who lived just 1 floor above them came to dinner. Then sometimes my Uncle Frank and Aunt Angelina came with their 2 kids. And of course we had 6 Periales there, and my grandmother. That would make a nice group of 23 to 25 people for Sunday dinner in a small apartment. They came early and they stayed late. No wonder our cat jumped out the 3rd floor window twice into the courtyard below. Sometime between the main dinner and the inevitable political arguments, They were more akin to the war in Bosnia. The children, anyone under 20, would put together something like a radio drama. This was 1936. This would keep us occupied and provide later entertainment for the family. Of course, John was the director and the main character. If it was a Western, John was duded out with a bandana around his neck and a pistol in his belt. If it was a murder mystery, John was the main detective and prosecuting attorney. He also handed out all the parts, gave the actors their lines, and blocked and edited all the scenes. The play was performed in a curtained alcove which opened into the dining room, where all the adults were still eating and paying no attention whatsoever to the children. Now for my recollection of John. I guess I resented the fact that he never gave me any good parts to play. I assumed it was because I was, quote, too small. What was this, a sports contest? I complained that I was never given any more than the most trivial and demeaning parts. So on one occasion, my mother told me to incorporate me into the cast. I really knew how to be a pain in the ass. That night, the theme was a murder mystery, and John told me I was the most important character.
Oh no, you can just
I was to be
imagine.
the corpse. Now, this wasn't too bad, because he not only had the corpse at the crime scene, but through his innate genius as a director, he had the corpse on display in the courtroom. This was definitely more than I hoped for. I knew that somehow I was going to make history that night. We had a final run-through and we were ready to perform for the crowd, who were now winding down from 4 hours at the table, and just passing time until the political argument started. The curtain went up and the play proceeded fairly well, working itself toward the final courtroom scene. This was the most serious drama this group had ever attempted, and John was not tolerating any deviation from the script. Even Uncle Albert, who was usually making jokes about our efforts, was caught up by the clever manipulations of the prosecutor. Guess who? At this point, the defense attorney, probably my brother Joe, was grilling the final witness, and the plot called for a strategic objection by the prosecutor, which would be ruled on by the judge, probably Paul. This was going to seal the case for the prosecutor. Guess who? This was the moment I had been waiting for. Just as the prosecutor rose to deliver his line, the corpse sat up and shouted, "I object, Your Honor." There was an instant when time seemed to hang still, and all motion slowed to an icy stillness. In the silence, my grandmother, who only spoke Sicilian, turned to my mother and asked in Sicilian, "What did James say?" So I shouted again, "I object." There was no point in going on. Film noir had become Looney Tunes, and John's moment in the sun had been erased by a 5-year-old who would later go on to fame as something very personal. But that's another recollection. I never saw John after that. I think he joined the army.
General George Patton once said to a second lieutenant, "I never heard such good-natured bullshit in all my life." I want to thank you for your wonderful efforts here on behalf of my la vecchiaia è carogna, però quelle che non ci arrive è più peggio, which loosely translated means old age is a bitch. But it's a hell of a lot worse for those that don't get there. There's another expression when toasting somebody, a glass of wine, you say cent'anni, which means 100 years. Well, the patriarch of the family was being feted by his relations. And a little duffer, about 8 years old, trying to make points with the old man on his 99th birthday, brought a glass over to him and he says, "Nonno, grandpa, cent'anni." The old man looks at him and slaps him right over the head. And the kid starts to cry. He said, "What'd you hit me for?" He said, "Well, you little bugger, you're only going to give me 1 more year?" One more year. Well, you're as old as you feel. I haven't got any feeling left anymore. Got a lot of feeling for a lot of people. This wonderful expression of good nature here tonight is hard to take. And for you friends who have joined in wishing me my 76th birthday, I'm truly grateful and happy that you have been able to be here. So, without any further ado, or any other half-baked jokes, I'll say thank you.
Do the chairs in the hall at the doorstep and picture me there. So this is what she sang to John. You always hurt the one you love.
So if you can't let me, you can't blow it out, you have it up there, you use a little fire. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to Where'd she go?
She'll be back. There she goes.